Very much, folks. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Andres Tobar. I'm still Executive Director of the Shirlington Employment and Education Center. By way of background, I was born in Edinburgh, Texas, right by the Mexican border. I was raised in Fresno, California. That's where I went to school. In Sacramento, got a master's degree and started working in the federal government. And that's literally what brought me out here in 1976 to work in the U.S. Department of Education. I worked there for a total of 23 years, took an early out at 50. I was going a little bit brain dead behind the desk. No offense to any former bureaucrats here, but I wanted to do something else. And so I worked in higher ed, by the way. I was primarily in the TRIO programs, dealing with upward bound talent search and special services. These are programs coming out of the war on poverty programs that helped young people stay in school, get in college, and get through college. Helped a lot of minorities get their education. So that was a very good experience. But nevertheless, as someone that oversees and reviews and evaluates, I wasn't feeling like I was doing or contributing to the end product. So I went into the nonprofit sector. I worked for 5 years as executive director of the National Association of Hispanic Publications. I dealt with Latino print throughout the country for 5 years, and then I moved on. And going back in terms of how we started SEEC, Walter Tejada and several other community leaders and I saw 150 primarily Latino immigrant men up and down Shirlington Road and 4 Mile Run, right in front of the Dunbar homes. We're looking at the late 90s, mind you, the Dunbar homes being totally an African-American community. And every morning they would have to see all these Latinos lined up on the street. And I mentioned to Walter that we as Latino leaders should do something to help. And that's how SEEC got started. We hired a gentleman, Wilfredo Borges, to be our first point person. And in 04, we went through a couple of directors that didn't fit and told us that they were going to be moving on for a variety of reasons. And so the board turned to me. I was the vice chair of the board at the time. They turned to me and asked me if I would take it over. And here I am with a master's degree, a former director of a national group. I was thinking corporate America would be my next step, but then I said, I'll do it for a year. 2 years later, I come back to the board. I said, I'll keep the job, but if you allow me to, but the 50% cut in pay that I took the first year, I'd like to get my full pay and I'd like to stay on. And that continued on to the present day. So we're talking about 18 years later, I'm still there. It gives me a real good opportunity to work in two worlds of sorts, working in the Arlington community as well as the immigrant community. And I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. On a personal note, I've run for the House of Delegates twice. In 2003, I ran against Adam Eben and several others. I lost by 71 votes. And in 09, I ran again in a different district, and Patrick Hope won that one. I was decisively defeated. So I decided I better look for other approaches of where to utilize my talents. And so I've definitely retired from the political scene and so I'm dabble in that, in a sense that there's other organizations that I'm very involved in that go to Richmond every year to advocate for the immigrant community. That's Bacolao, the Virginia organization of Virginia. All these acronyms. Virginia Coalition of Latino Organizations. I'm involved in another group, by the way, the Virginia Latino Leaders Council with Walter Tejada in terms of trying to promote Latino civic engagement. Sometimes I get a little confused with those. Those are on my spare time, by the way. Let me focus on SEEC, which is what you folks are interested in, and which I want to share with you. The organization started trying to provide a helping hand to these folks that came from primarily Central and South America. Many of them had paid coyotes between $3,000 and $7,000 to get them here. $7,000 being from primarily El Salvador and Guatemala in Central America, 3,000, say, from the Mexican immigrants. We don't have too many of those coming into Arlington. The biggest share right now is people from Guatemala. In the 80s, in the 1980s, El Salvador having that civil war, major infusion of Salvadorans into the area. Some people say, well, why did they pick the area? Part of it is, who do they know? And then the word of mouth gets around. If some of you may or may not know what a Fresno Indian is. Fresno Indian is the Armenians. I was raised in Fresno, California, by the way. That's why I know about this. But these are in Armenia during the Turkish, as it's called now, the genocide against the Armenian community. Many Armenians left the country, came to New York, and they say, I want a plane ticket to Fresno. That's all they knew. And so major community in Fresno. And so all of us have ways of doing that. The first ones go out, and I think that OAS, Organization of American States, that hires folks from Latin America, I'm sure the word of mouth went out that the metropolitan area is a good place to be. So a major infusion of Latinos over the last 20 years have come over. And but going back to the origins of SEEC and the concentration of Latinos right there by the Weenie Beanie, the reason they congregated around there used to be a lumber company that closed actually about 5 or 6 years ago. I believe it was ABC Distributors. They would, a lot of folks would come buy lumber and leave. Sometimes a few people would be outside the lumber company and as workers looking for work, and they would get picked up to go help them. So the word spread throughout the metropolitan area that this was a good place to find jobs. And that's why we had this major infusion of Latino immigrant men looking for temporary work in this particular area. And I realize I'm putting a variety of things, as you can imagine, I'm tossing things out. Back in the 1980s, in 1990s, it was possible for an employer that wanted to hire an undocumented immigrant to put an ad in the paper and announcing the job that they had. So when nobody responded, then they would apply to the Department of Labor saying, hey, look, we've tried and nobody was available. Then they would go to the immigration and get a green card for the worker that was undocumented. All of those opportunities primarily have closed in the last 20 years. It's very, very difficult. And if you may have heard immigrant advocates indicate the immigration system is broken and nobody is working on how to fix it. That's why we have some major problems of lack of workers in certain markets because they can't get the labor force to come in. And so as a result of that, we've got serious problems all over the country. In the West Coast with all the agriculture workers, the limited access for immigrants to come in if they're undocumented, creating major losses of agricultural products and others. So we have some serious problems here. So I hope in that light, you look at the immigrants here, and these are able-bodied men primarily that are out there as day laborers. These are folks that came out here trying to follow the American dream, looking for a better opportunity for themselves and their families. The only problem is they got here, there's no way for them to become legal. And hence, this is why we have such a large day labor population. They can't get jobs in any kind of permanent location because they're undocumented. So that causes some real challenges for them in our communities because of their limitation. So they're out there. What we try to do is try to find folks, and primarily in subcontractors or family folks that are looking for somebody to do landscape work or moving. They're coming in or leaving Arlington, or minor jobs in painting and some of the, we don't compete with painters and others that are legally here. Okay, in all candor, we do not try to develop painting companies or something that would go and compete. All we say is these folks have limited skills, and if you have, you know, a room or something and you need a helping hand, call us and we'll refer somebody to you. In terms of the wages, we ask people, look, folks, don't, you know, many people pay, you know, 10, 12, $15 an hour. We say we're encouraging people to pay a $15 to $20 an hour for a 4-hour minimum, and so that the worker will get a decent compensation. We've had a few people in the past that said, well, I'll pay them for the time they work. It was an hour and a half. They were paying them $10. An hour, they give them $15 and thinking they're helping this guy. Well, if this guy was in Latin America, that might be useful, but they're here in the United States. They've got to pay for their housing, for their food, and everything else like you and I do. And they need a heck of a lot more money than the $10 a day that they would get in say Guatemala or some of these other Latin American countries. $10 a day. You can imagine why they want to come over here. But they're not there. So they've got to get some compensation in order to survive here, and if possible, send money home to help their families, because that's what they are trying to do. And also pay off some of the debts, you know, the $3,000 to $7,000 they committed to the coyotes. Many coyotes, or the smugglers, mind you, are from their particular homes where they come from. So they were able to say, I'll go over there and work and pay you off. But, you know, while we're doing that, we will mortgage or whatever it's called. When you say, look, we have a small place here, this is what it's valued. If we can't do that, then you can come after my home or something. But they mortgage everything to try to get folks to come out here. So we ask people, the two things that are important is, number one, compensation, give them a reasonable wage. And the other thing is charity. These are people that are in desperate need. So they're not out there, you know, panhandling or doing anything that I'm chastising anybody in that have needs that do that. But I'm just saying, these are people that are hardworking people that are looking for work. And let me tell you, in all candor and being very blunt here, there are businesses that ultimately, out of desperation, will hire some folks that can get an ITN number, which is from the IRS, where they can report their wages, and they hire them at their risk, mind you, but they hire them because of desperation. And so some of these people that have some very good work ethics, and they get hired out by some of these subcontractors, and because they're that good. And so we went from 150 or so people that were congregating by the Weenie Beanie in that area, and now if you go over there, it's about 15 to 20. And the reason is, obviously, because of all the developments that have occurred over there, the lumber company has gone away, and employers are looking for workers elsewhere. And it is no longer that magnet that it used to be. But the way that Arlington handled it was in a very humane way of allowing them to stay for a significant amount of time, including developing or designating the pavilion by the Weenie Beanie where they could congregate and wait for employers. Now, the challenges for SEEC is that at the time, we evaluated how many jobs were going out through there. Is anybody that came by, got in a car and left, we considered that a job. So there were times where we got 100 jobs in a day, sometimes 50, you know, but over the year, we'd be getting about 100, or rather 1,500 jobs using that method, you know, just tallying, they got jobs and they left. Well, now that we've moved over to a great facility, which is the Arlington Mill Community Center, the problem is there's no place where they can congregate and people can just come by. Now employers have to contact us, and we contact the worker, and then they set off. So the numbers, you can imagine, are dropping dramatically because the workers no longer congregate at our office because jobs are not coming very quickly. We rely upon phone calls or emails from folks that are looking for workers, or some of the contacts we've had over the years that they call us and say, hey, can I get a worker here or there to do this particular thing? So the way that it's working now is much more difficult. We're almost doing the same kind of format as the employment office for Arlington County is doing. And we do not have that kind of reach. And so we have some limitations. But it's a lot better than what we had. The last location that we had for our office was condemned because, and that was the last existing facility we could have gotten by the Weenie Beanie area, the Green Valley area. So the county got involved in helping us find a location there at the Arlington Mill Community Center. And we got the last office in that building that was not designated. It's on the 4th floor. It literally, I tell people, if a CEO owned that business, they would have their office where we have ours. Obviously, we don't get the same pay as a CEO, but nevertheless, it's a great facility. People are coming in looking for work, and also a lot of other assistance, because most of the clients that we have are monolingual Spanish speakers. They get bills, or they have a health issue. They go to emergency in the hospital. They get a major bill. They contact our office and come in and say, look, can you help me translate? Can you give me some help in seeing if I can lower this so I can pay it off? I mean, it's a series of issues that goes beyond work that we have been faced with, our limited, 3-person staff, that we're doing a lot of social work to some degree to try to help them cope with living in Arlington.
Andre, I have a couple of questions that have come in. The first one is, do you help people get green cards and permanent full-time jobs?
No, we don't. And the permanent job is the thing is, we refer people to jobs. Whether they're hired or not is up to the employer. We have referred people to a variety of businesses filling out job applications. And by the way, as a former retired federal employee, I do not lie, and I tell the workers, do not lie in any of your applications. We do not advocate for any kind of bogus ID or green card or social security number. We do not intervene at all in that. Now, we know that some of that is going on, and how people survive, it's going to be left up to them. But we do not advocate in any way that they do that. And I tell them, look, folks, I know that some people may have some bogus IDs. A police officer stops you for whatever reason. Please don't show them a false ID. That is a crime. You cannot misrepresent yourself. We sell, by the way, we sell IDs to our workers for $5 in a money order. We don't want to take any cash. We don't want anybody accusing us of taking money and pocketing it. And as you know, sometimes the reputations of people can be destroyed by word of mouth. And these folks have a lot of communication amongst themselves. So we're going on the high road on trying to do that. But no, in terms of the referrals, we do not get involved in anything dealing with immigration service. But I did want to share a couple of other things, and then I'll be quiet and address any issues. We've done some training because the focus has been totally on men. We said it wasn't fair that we weren't doing anything for immigrant women. So we've done some training on greenhouse cleaning for a number of years, but now we're focusing on on how to start a business. Because number one, you do not have to be legally here to start a business. It might be news to some of you, but it's true. The thing is that they can't get any kind of federal or state loans or anything like that. But to start a business, they can do it without being legally here. We have some very talented women that have come from Latin America, that the only thing they need, obviously legal status and their ability to speak English, but they are phenomenal in doing catering and doing a variety of other things. And they've started their own business. But what we've done is we've trained them. We brought some experts in business development in Spanish and provided a series of sessions that they could do on Zoom, so they can learn how to do it correctly and how they can pay their taxes so they don't get in trouble. and how do they do marketing and a variety of other things. That's been a pretty good success effort. Now that it's legal for our, Virginians to get a driver's, it's not a driver's license, it's a driver's privilege card, which means that you're undocumented, you can't get a license, but you can get a driver's privilege card. What we are doing now is we started a class in and teaching them how the laws of Virginia and what the signs mean. And we have advocated for this for years. And finally, a couple of years ago, this was passed. And the reason it's important is folks, if people need to get to a job, they may drive irrespective of whether or not they have a license. And I think you recognize that it's the demand or the need is going to drive people to do things that normal people wouldn't. If you close all the doors, something is going to happen. Now that the door is open, let's teach them the laws and the rules of driving so that they can not only get a driver's privilege card, they can also get insurance for the car and they can register their car. Some people complain about all these people from Maryland coming over here and working. I said, they're not Maryland, they're Virginians. It's just that they couldn't get a driver's license, so they have to register the car over there. So now this is opening it up and making it more reasonable for folks to live and work here in Virginia. I wanted to share that with you in terms of training. I yield to you in terms of any kinds of questions.
Okay, there's a question. This person used to see groups at the U-Haul on Columbia Pike.
Yep.
Orland Springs Road. Does SEEC work with U-Haul or other movers or truck rental places like that?
No, we don't. It's right outside of the Arlington perimeters. So we've gone over there. By the way, something I forgot to mention is lunches. We got Our Lady Queen of Peace Catholic Church donating bag lunches every Thursday. We have a number of others, including Rock Spring UCC that provides lunches to our workers twice a month. And we've had others. We've had donations for food where we buy meals from Latino restaurants in South Arlington and give to our workers. So, I mean, there's been an effort to try to help, especially during that pandemic when everything went down and people were going hungry and rental assistance was needed. The county has pitched in through a number of programs to help subsidize some of the rent for some of these folks so they don't become totally homeless. So, but the U-Haul issue is a real issue. Many of our day laborers, after competing, and having challenges over at SEEC, they went over to the U-Haul, and they're out there. And as you can see, sometimes you go by there's about 10 or 15 guys out there, and it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. They're looking for work, and people rent vehicles, and some of them get picked up. So there's actually some responses from the community for them. But no, we don't. We tell them to come to our office, and we will see what kind of work skills they have and refer them if possible, and also refer them to the employment office of Arlington and others so that they can get some help. But they want the job now. And so while if we don't have anything there to offer immediately, they will move on and look wherever it is that they.
Andres, this is Anita, can I just ask you to clarify right now, like if a moving company came to you and said, we will take some day workers on Monday through Friday, these places, would you be able to refer those folks to a moving company?
Yes. And I'm sure some of our guys do work for moving companies, but they work, on a 1 or 2 day basis.
I know.
But yeah.
What is the, it's chicken and egg, isn't it? You need the moving companies to come to you and say, Andres, I'll have 3 slots every week. And do you have a list of the moving companies that have these jobs, or any other company for that matter?
We do not have a list. What it's been is individuals contact us if they've got moving, but it's primarily homeowners that do
Wow.
that. They're moving in and out. The moving companies, because there's still some folks out there in by the Weenie Beanie, by the way, if you go out there, you'll see about between 5 and 10. There've been at times there've been 15, but it may be on the weekend. But sometimes there's much less. You go by at 10 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes there's only 4 or 5. So the
Okay,
numbers.
so I just put in the chat your website.
Yeah, thank you.
SEEC jobs.org. And so if I need to hire somebody, Mike Murtha, for example, I see that there is a button. I have to fill out an application to hire day laborers.
You can just call us directly. That was a
Okay.
recommendation that was made. That button is going to be formatted so that whoever has a need fills that application, and it automatically is transferred to our office. But
You do have somebody answering the phone there?
at the office, sure. And if we're not there, there's a recording. You leave a message, we'll get back to you the next day.
Okay.
Our office hours, by the way, are from 8 in the morning till noon. And that was by design. Originally, when we started this, I suggested, because the workers would get out there like at 6 in the morning and whatever, sometimes 6:30. I said, let's have the office open from 7 to 11. If you have not received a job by 11 o'clock in the morning, you need to move on to your job, move on with your life. You ought to go to training, or you ought to do something else. You can't stay the whole day there working for that job, especially since it's in the mornings when most of the jobs come by. So we did. And the other thing is, there are people that will congregate where there's people. And we had folks that we're not even looking for work, would just be there in the office a full 4 hours that we were open. And then when we closed, they would leave. So what we've done, we need to move on ourselves. Our staff has to do some other work and a variety of different things. And so we closed where we see the public, or if they say, I can't do it in the morning, we make an appointment in the afternoon, they can come by.
All
But,
right, and just to follow up, I put the web address again in the chat box, seecjobs.org. And the phone number is 703-933-1101.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Gary, back to the questions.
Well, you've talked about educating drivers and talking to women about starting businesses. Do you have other educational programs that you guys are providing?
There was one class that we offered in September for workers that are interested in doing construction work. It's a one-day session where they can get a Class C, and I'm not sure that it's a license, but it's a permit for them to be authorized to submit bids up to $10,000 for construction work. It teaches them the laws that they have to comply with in order to do that. So to help some of these folks that are in construction and are literally competing for jobs out there, this would give them the legal means of doing it, give them a certificate that they could use. But that's the extent of it at this point.
Okay.
We used to have drywall classes, ceramic tile classes to teach them, but workers would come the first day and they wouldn't come the next. I mean, we'd set up these classes and they kept telling us, I need a job right now. So this is the challenge we have with and the urgency. And as you will probably find organizations that are teaching English skills. As you can imagine how difficult it is for an adult to learn another language, present company included here. I'm sure that if you try some other language, it is not easy. And these guys, many of them are not educated, so they've got multiple challenges, but they're picking up the language in survival skills in order to do that. And some of them are doing very well on that. But for classes, it's been a real challenge for us. We call it tutoring in English as opposed to classroom settings, because it normally would start with maybe 5 to 10 and drop down to 2 and 3. I mean, it literally, you'd be tutoring individual.
Next question is, have the recent arrivals in this area from Texas had an impact on your services?
Up until now, no, they have not. These, I believe, are going through a number of other, I think, Catholic social services and other faith-related entities that are helping to place, and now the county, or rather DC government, is getting actively involved in that. But no, we have not seen any of that as of yet.
Can undocumented folks drive for Uber or Lyft or taxi companies if they have a driver's privilege card?
I have no clue. They would have to be applying directly to Uber, and I don't know what their policy is.
Okay. Do you know if Goodwill can hire undocumented workers?
I believe they cannot. But again, you need to double check. I'm pretty sure they can't, not in terms of a full. The problem is people are abiding by the law, you know, and you don't blame them. And you know, I've gone through churches and others that if we're talking about a permanent job, they will not, you know, they're not going to violate the law and jeopardize their nonprofit status.
Do you have a need for volunteers? And if you do, what kinds of things could volunteers do to help you out?
Well, we're getting more and more casework involved. The person would love to have somebody that's bilingual, because many of the cases that people are coming with, they need appointments with some of the local, you know, embassies from their Latin American countries so they can renew or get a passport. Like, as I said, we're making calls to hospitals to see if we can reduce or get some kind of well, reduction in the cost, because they cannot pay the full amount. And a variety, they get tickets. I don't know how they get driving tickets, but they do. We won't go there, but so it's a variety of things that they need. They want to comply with things that one would normally take for granted here. But if they don't know what the letter indicates, they need somebody to translate for them. So the answer would be yes, we could, but we would request that that person be bilingual. And if in doubt, if you got a particular skill that you want, or you want to come and visit our office, please call me direct. And I believe I have my office, my cell number. I tell people, I don't know whether people get intimidated by calling me or what. I don't get very many calls, irrespective, or maybe, you know, there's no need to contact me, period. But
Okay, Andres, what's your cell number?
it's 202-841-7988.
Okay, Andres, mobile. That's direct to you.
Yes.
If you get somebody calling and saying, I just heard you ask if you needed help, I'm calling,
That's fine.
you'll be glad to get that call.
Well, let me hold off on whether I'll be glad.
Well, let's hope that you get a lot of calls.
Thank you so much for that.
Are there other groups in the Northern Virginia or the DC area generally like SEEC? And do you coordinate or exchange ideas with any other groups to learn from each other's experiences and share best practices?
There's one in Centerville that is doing a very good job of helping, but all of us bring different challenges. We've discussed a number of things. There is a national day laborers association. We're not part of that. Because, you know, candor, I have made a commitment that my commitment is to help day laborers in Arlington. Now, they may be, they live here or they come to work here, And if they do and they need our help, we'll help them. We don't turn anybody away because of where they live. But I am not looking to get more or expand our service. I just want this thing to work. And so far, I think we've been pretty successful. By the way, we have some money aside for rental assistance. We have $32,000 in our grant. And what we do is we provide that in $250 checks, but they go to the landlord. They don't go to the worker. We're taking measures, cautionary measures, to ensure that anything we do is going to be to achieve the purpose for which those funds are going for. The last thing we want is to have a scandal where somebody was given a check, they had a party, and and they said, well, SEEC gave me this money. And then they don't get the money, the landlord does. So we take steps because we know human beings being what they are. And let me point out one other thing. People come from a Latin American country, they don't know the language, they meet all these challenges, and it is very tough psychologically on them. There are a number of people that pick up drinking because, to try to cope. There are others that have literally have meltdowns emotionally because of the struggles that they've had. So the COVID, it brought jobs almost to a total standstill. We were fortunate to partner with an entity that allowed us to register the workers. So we registered more than 300 to get their shots. And so we've been cooperating, but the challenge that they have had are similar, if not more compounded than what normally most of us would encounter, because they're away from their homes, away from support systems. So it's been a really, really difficult time on them.
Do you refer people who are having problems like that to various county services that can help them?
In all candor, we do, and on a very limited basis. Some of them, it combines with some health measure, and they are picked up by the health community. We have a phenomenal working relationship with Arlington Free Clinic. When Nancy White first came on board as director, she brought her whole staff over to SEEC. We're still by the Weenie Beanie. And she says, I want to work closely with your clients. She says, anybody that needs immediate attention, contact my office. We'll make appointments to them directly, immediately, so they can be seen. And as you may know or familiar with Arlington Free Clinic, there is a lottery because of the tremendous demand. But she said, no, your workers, we will see them immediately. Phenomenal response. Same thing with Charlie Ming at Arlington Food Assistance Center, and Andrew Snyder at Arlington Thrive. I mean, everybody's pitching in and saying, let us know what challenges you have, and we'll attempt to work with you. And by the way, if I can just add an aside, I'm also the president of the Arlington County Crime Solvers. We have a very good relationship with the police department. And as you can imagine, when we're dealing in safety net organizations, people come in and we do not, nobody is saying you can or cannot come in at the door. And from time to time, we have some folks that think rules don't apply to them. And we welcome them and ask them to, please be cordial to everybody else. And if not, we will have to ask them to leave. And if they don't leave, we'll have to ask the police to come and escort them out. And it's happened rarely, but it's happened. And we say thank you to the police department for being there, to providing the assistance that we need when we need it, to make Arlington safe for everybody.
Andres, how many clients are you serving at any given time? What's the range of the numbers of people that you are trying to help from a low point? Is it seasonal, or is it pretty continuous, or has it been increasing, or what?
Well, the numbers, I mean, we have about 150 people registered with us that come to us on a regular basis. And yeah, if they get jobs on their own, they're not coming to SEEC. But one of the things that it is helpful to them is that ID that we provide. You know, we charge $5 and it has to be renewed every year because we want to keep these things current. If a police officer stops somebody and asks for an ID, they give them the SEEC ID. They see that they have an address on there. And by the way, the SEEC ID is totally legal. It doesn't say that it's a legal document. All it says is this person is registered with SEEC and is looking for work. It doesn't say their legal status at all.
And does it have a photo ID? It's a photo.
It does, yes. So it's got a photo, their address, and what kind of work they do.
Great.
And at the back, it does say that this person is registered at SEEC. So we keep, like I say, we keep everything on the up and up. And but it's helpful if a police officer sees somebody is walking by, it seems to be a little bit inebriated, and stops them and questions, who is this person? And they give them an ID. At least they know where they live, and that's helpful to them. So and it's helpful to both the police and the client that they labor. So
what
yeah,
could our members do to help? The people on the call are always interested in good causes, and I'm so glad you joined us today to share all of this really interesting, really important information about individuals in our community that we see, but we really don't see unless we're out helping. So how can we help?
let me mention the Good Company Donuts and Cafe on Glebe, close to Wilson. Just before they opened, they contacted Charlie Ming at AFAC, and they said, we'd like to have a nonprofit that can take the donuts that we don't sell during the day and give them to the poor. And Charlie said, well, we have a much bigger operation that would literally is too small for us, but let me contact some nonprofits. And I jumped to the head of the line, and they gave us the donuts that they don't sell, we could pick up. I could use a driver or two from time to time. I have to leave. I'm the one that picks them up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I take them to different locations. The Arlington Community High School, which is primarily young adults, immigrants that are finishing up their high school studies in South Arlington. We give them donuts for a day. We do another community group that deals with parents, immigrant parents. We give those obviously to our office and our clients. And so we spread it around. We know some of these things are a double-edged sword, you know, so you're giving sugar to these people, don't you? Well, you gotta, you know, there are times where we have to look at some of these things and say, look, we're not purists here, okay? We've got to, if somebody does something in moderation, it's going to be okay. It's when you do it on a massive scale that you're going to have some challenges. So we try not to be too critical in terms of where or what can happen here. But these are good gestures that are made by the business community. So I could use a driver or two that when I'm not here could actually go by and pick them up, and I would tell them where they could drop them off.
Okay, very good.
And my phone number you already have, so if they can call, that would be great.
Well, Gary, have you got any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Well, I think we've covered everything.
Well, again, Andres, as I said, this is a group of people that has been in our community in a capacity that helps a lot of us. The immigrants have been coming for more than 25 years, as you well recognize. You saw them years ago, and you've done something for them. And I think that we all really owe you a great debt for seeing a need and addressing it in a very effective way. As I said to you before we started, Arlington Neighborhood Village saw a need. Our founders had a good idea, and we're trying to do the same as you, which is to turn it into a sustainable, successful, and effective organization. Thanks again. And we've got Patricia saying muchas gracias.
Hey, there you go. De nada, un verdadero placer y gracias por participar en esta discusión.
And David Christian is going to reply to you on that. We run a Spanish conversation group from time to time.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I will leave your group now, if that's okay.
Yep.
Yes, and we will stop
Thank you all.
recording.
It's a
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.